Cylinder heads are all back. The machine shop, CK Motor Engineers, Cressix in High Wycombe, they've been over. I sent the stripped down heads to them. This was the head that had the bent valve on it. They had to replace that guide. They had to do work on 2 of the seats. I've subsequently reassembled, and I'm just about to, because I've just now got the exhaust valve has come in. So I'm just about to put this last valve in, and we can be done. Oh yes. So as you can see, there was some damage, ignition damage to the seat, but I think they've taken it down a little bit. I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to see what happens, because I had to grind the seat back. Once I've ground this valve in, I'll see where the grind mark goes down to, and then we'll take it from there. The other head is fully assembled and ready to go back in. So fully assembled. The only problem I had to do here was one of these seats, one of the valve seats, they had to grind back quite a long way. You can see that valve has gone back maybe 1/2 mil. That one's sitting proud of the surface, that one's below the surface. So all you do then is when you put the valves in, put a flat edge across the top there, and I just had to take 1/2 millimetre off that one. Obviously when the valve was on the bench. So with this, what are we going to do here? Okay, let's rotate it around so I can actually see what's going on first and foremost. I wanted to show you the damage to the seat, which I'm assured will not be a problem. And that damage was caused really by the combustion taking place the other side of the exhaust valve. Now, some of these valves are not the best. Anyway, I've managed to pick up from a trusted supplier a couple of boxes of used old stock Land Rover exhaust valves. I'm only going to put one in. We don't need the entire set. It's proper old school masking tape here. Look at this stuff. Right, and in here should be brand spanking new exhaust valves, all in their brown paper. Nice, eh? Let's just check it fits in there. It does. Right, so I need to grind that in. Now, grinding these in, I use one of these. It's a Gunson's Easy Lap. I don't know if other people make them or not. You attach it into a drill, and they're dead easy to work with. Let me, first and foremost, what I'll do, because we're kind of ready to do this, I need some Vaseline. The reason I need Vaseline is because I put it in the cup on the end there, and it sticks. Sticky like a sticky face. Right, so grinding a brand spanking new valve into a freshly recut seat. Start with the coarse grinding paste, and I literally just put some around the edge of the valve. It's all a bit cold today, so things aren't working perhaps as nicely as I would expect them to. Then, having done that, I'll put a bit of Vaseline on the cup, and then the cup goes on the end of the valve. And then what I do, don't grip it, just slow this thing down. Let's get in and dirty and see if I can show you what this is actually doing. So stick the Easy Lap on it, supporting the Easy Lap. Turn it, you can see the valve turns. Lift it up, drop it down, let's come off. I just get the feeling that on this head, let's turn it right round, my cat-handed fashion. Of course the camera's in the way, folks, if you don't mind getting out of my bloody way. Right, position you. Right, so you're standing that way around now. Let's get the exhaust valve up. And here you can see what I'm talking about. There's the nick. And you can see where the seat's cut. So there's probably about 1.5 millimeters above where the nick is. But to my mind, it might just be a weak spot. It's not ideal, is it? Goes in nice though. Now, I mean, the options here would be to grind that seat a lot further, and then I'd have to take the tip off the valve stem in order to make the rocker gear all consistent. I mean, we're not talking a high performance application here, really, are we? That's not ideal, I will be honest. Let's try a fine paste now, because the fine paste tends to just polish things up a little bit. So I'll pop that in there with the fine paste on it and position that on there. And then valve out. And you can see on the edge of the valve here, the matte surface is going very, very slightly shiny. And that's where the mating face is. And then as I clean the rest out here, you can see the valve will mate from there down to just below where that nick is. So that, to my mind, needs to be back at the machine shop. Okay, so I've had a good old chat with Anthony up at CK Motor Engineers. He's basically saying, well, it's not ideal. It is corrosion in the steel seat. You will get more pitting like this, which I know about anyway. You will get more pitting like this on the exhaust valve seats because they tend to have much higher heats going through them. But then the aluminium carries the heat from the valve and the seat away really, really, really fast. He said the most likely cause for this will have been the valve was closed and there was water sitting on top of it. And that's why it started to corrode. Quite why it didn't corrode at the lowest point, I don't know. Anyway, we are where we are. In order to cut that down even further, would render the seat useless. So his suggestion is there is a good 2.5 mil of valve seat there that is good. Okay, there's a fair chance it's basically from this top edge here down to the top of the pit. So top of the pit. So basically he says if it was a race engine, the thing would be coming apart every. However, this isn't a race engine, this is a really low compression Rover V8. He thinks that this thing's going to last like an eternity. It's difficult to know because it's not ideal, it shouldn't be like that. We've got two options. The first option is to do nothing, cut the seat, put the valve in, monitor the situation. The second option is to cut the valve seat out, replace the valve seat, cut the new valve seat, grind the new valve in. I've passed the options on to the customer, so I think what we do is we put this thing together, we see if this problem gets any worse over the next couple of thousand miles, and base our decision on that. Otherwise, we're chucking a couple of £100 really in time to get this seat replaced when it may not actually need it, because there's enough beef up there. I don't know what you think. It's a good example, I think, of weird things that might occur in an old engine and how you might do them. So I haven't actually got an answer on this, I'll be honest. I'm going to put it together and we're going to see whether the problem gets any worse in the coming thousands of miles. Well, I needed to take the water pump off, which needed to be changed, and then because there's only another, like, I guess 4 or 5 bolts after the water pump is out of the way, I thought, oh, let's take the timing cover off, clean everything up, put it back together again. Have you ever seen a chain as baggy as that? I don't understand this engine. It's coming apart. I'm taking the chain up. I'll speak to the customer first of all, but there's no discernible wear in the bores. The sump oil stinks of petrol, and I'm not saying just lightly smells. It stinks. The chain is as baggy as fuck. The hydraulic tappets look okay, but again, on the underside of them, they're fairly worn. If you can see, I mean, it's a round wear mark. Can you see that? I don't know if I could try and get the camera angle right on that. There is a round recess in the bottom of the hydraulic tappet. Now, the reason the fuel is in the sump, by the way, is because if we come out here, I've just popped it out here for a second. It's going to come back in now to be cleaned up. It's fucking cold out here. The early Rover V8 engines had the fuel pump located on the side of the timing cover, right there. So I'm suspecting that the fuel pump has been leaking past its diaphragm and into the sump. Then, when I actually got the lobe off, and this is the chap that drives the fuel pump rocker, I'd like to see if I can get another one of those. It's weird. Right, so nice new exhaust valve goes into the guide. I'll just put some oil in there, just an engine oil, just to lube everything up. It's a mess, I know. Put the spring in, holding the valve close with my finger. Put the valve top on, find the valve spring compressor, and then hold the valve in place with the compressor, and then compress. And puts the 2 collets in. Done. Right. Had enough of this now, this head, so I'm going to pop the head somewhere safe, and I'm going to get on with the engine. Right, let's get on with measuring the bore. And I don't mean me. You're so funny, Richard. Right, so I'm going to get on with measuring the bore. So there's a couple of pieces of information I need here. First and foremost is the bore diameter, which I've got in the ROM here, just a page printed out from the ROM. So standard 3.5 litre engine is 88.86 to 88.90 millimetres, or 3.498, 3 inches and 498 thou, or 3 inches and 500 thou. So then what we do, we've got a bore gauge. This detects how boring I am. Oh Lord. Turning you around, clankety clankety clank. Now over here, my micrometer. If I can get my brain working today, it would be quite pleasant, wouldn't it? It's not hard clamped in the vise, I do need to get some soft jaws. I'll turn the micrometer on. I've got the joy of having a nice digital micrometer here. I'll position the bore gauge into the micrometer, which is pre-configured to 3.5 inches, and I will hit the 0 button. Okay. Now, in theory, when that thing goes into 3.5 inches, I should have 0 on here. So, with that in mind, we'll go over to the engine. Long way round, I'm afraid. So we'll measure, I think we'll measure, let's just stop for a second. So just as a for instance, let's measure number 3. So that goes in, and I go below the lip, and I wiggle, keep one end steady, and wiggle the other end up and down, and we are getting to 3.5 inches exactly. So by keeping this end steady, pivoting that end up and down, I can get a maximum and a minimum. And basically what I'm looking for is the halfway point between the maximum and the minimum. That bore is 3.5 inches on the nose, which is good actually, because even down here towards the bottom end, let's go right down on top of the piston, 3.5 inches. So like I suggested, there is very little wear on this, on the bores. So I'm resting on the top of the piston, and I have got 3.5 inches. Let's go over here. So I position him in, resting the wheels on the top of the piston so I know I'll get a flat surface. Three and a half inches. I've not, I mean, there's no science in this. All I can really see is that this engine has never been bored. Unlike you lot. Like I say. Oh, that one might have. Half a thou bigger than 3.5 inches. So I think, yeah, each of these cylinders, this is an unmolested engine. So I think next, really, having done the ball gauge check, next really I'm going to get all these hydraulic tappets out and get the chain off and order some new parts up and get it back together again. Right, let's get these, so I need to get the cam out next, and in order to do that I'm going to get the hydraulic tappets out. Assuming that the cam and hydraulic tappets were replaced at the same time, I am going to keep them all in the same order. So all I'm really doing here is putting a piece of tape up on the bonnet. I'll then just put cylinder 2, #2, #2, #4, #6, #8. Take each tap it out. Now, you should be able to just lift them up, really. They really shouldn't be tight in the bore. The main reason for taking all these hydraulic tappets out, by the way, is I want to give this valley a fucking good rinse out. So I'm going to take the cam out. I'm going to see if I can vacuum the worst of this shit up. And then I'm going to see if I can tidy it up, but without polluting the oilways that go down to the crank. Clankety clankety fucking clank, Richard. So the objective really is to see if I can get it all apart and without polluting the oilways, which I don't want to do, take it apart. You've seen the bores appear to be good. I wonder if this lot is just rust from the underside of the inlet manifold gasket. Actually, it's quite a lot of it. It's going to need a good vacuum. Right, so clean screwdriver underneath the hydraulic tappet, lift it up, and out it comes. One. And then we go. There's a second hydraulic tappet there for cylinder 2. Cylinder 4. This again kind of all rings of the engine being in fairly good order. Now the reason I'm going to take the camshaft out is because it's difficult to see what's going on with it all in place, and I've got to replace the timing gears anyway. So what the hell? Makes no odds, does it? That's the one that had the broken push rod. Now, as long as I don't close the bonnet, they should all stay in the same order, shouldn't they? There we go. we got the other side, #7, #5, #3, valley gasket out of the way. If when this comes apart I find that the cam is fucked, then obviously I'll be replacing cam and hydraulic followers. Now this one is stuck. That was stuck for some reason. So that was number 7. I'll put a little cross against the stuck so I know it's from there. I'll show you how to get the stuck ones out in a second. Cylinder 5. They've got some age to them, these tappets, I think. That one's coming up. But it wasn't unduly noisy, this engine. More noise coming through the back firing through the inlet than anything else. Now, we got this up so far. Basically what you really need to do is to get, pardon me, get a Allen key underneath the hydraulic tappet to push it up. And the only reason I use an Allen key is because it's got an angled end on it. Right, let's try something like that one. And then position the Allen key underneath and push it right up. There it goes. Comes and out. And there I've done the usual thing of dropping the fucking Allen key into the engine magnet. Leave my small magnet. No end of joy. Glad I did that actually. Not. Yes. One Allen key. Sometimes they tinkle all the way down to the sump. Right, now having done that, what we next need to do is to take the chain off the front of the engine here. Now what will often happen is the cam will want to move forwards at the same time as you're taking the chain off. So worst case scenario here, if you come forwards a little bit and down a little bit, you can see roughly what's going on. If I put the light above it, hey, there we go. You can see what's going on now. No, you can't. You can't see a fucking thing. Right, okay. So what I really want to do here is to see if I can get these sprockets off. Oh, that sprocket's loose. That's good. It's unusual actually. Clank, clank, fucking clank. Oh, in fact, buy me a stand that doesn't go clank every time you walk near it. Right, that was moving too. So, in a nutshell, getting these sprockets off, you need to take them off at the same time. So both the crank and the cam sprocket need to come off. And when I take them off, this is at top dead center by the way, this thing. I'll show you the markings on the pulleys when it eventually comes off. And here it comes. Right, that's one marking, the top dead center. And that's the other marking, the top dead center. It's all in the manual, and effectively what you do is you align them such that the two marks, if I can get that aligned, two marks are actually one above the other, so it's not quite right, but one tooth further around. There we are. So the marks are actually aligned to each other. So you've got a dot there, you've got a line there. Okay, so that's how you get the chain on at top dead centre. That can go there. Clothiest McClothy face. We'll see if we can pull this camshaft out. So the camshaft has got smaller bearings at the back than it has at the front. So you should be able to, in theory, there we go, lift it up, and being careful not to clatter the bearings as you withdraw the camshaft. Here he comes, and he's out. One camshaft. Now let's have a look. You can wait. I think he's quite tired actually. Let's have a look. I've put worse camshafts back in, but you'll see what else needs doing with this engine. So having wiped it all off, we can see that the lobes are all in fairly good order. So it's got some wear to it, but it's not the end of the day for it. It probably would have lasted a bit longer. Do we put a new cam in it, or do we leave it as is? That's the question, $1,000,000 question. The next thing I always like to do is check the state of the front bearing. Now, you need really to check this top edge here, so I'm just going to get my mirror. If I shine that up there, really want to wipe that a bit more because there might still be some oil on it. And this is one area of the Rover V8 that's quite commonly overlooked. The camshaft bearings, you can replace them, it's not the end of the world, but if you're doing that, then you would normally be replacing all the bearings as well. Now I'd say that that one is fine. I'm not seeing any marks on it at all. That's good. And if I look down through the top, let's move the camshaft out of the way, look down through the top at the other bearings, they don't look bad at all. So looking at the follower, you can see a very distinct circle on there, which I can feel with my fingernail, and that's where the follower would sit on the lobe and rotate as it's operating, and that will suggest to me, again, they've got life left in them, but it's the oil holder. I'm inclined to replace. We'll see what the customer says. I mean, bearing in mind that so far the indications are that it's an original cam, it's probably got an original set of rockers in it, the engine is at 3.5 inches bores. I've not been down and checked every single kind of like orientation, but the engine's looking fairly good at the moment. I will go back in a minute and I'll do a right angles check, so basically checking in two orientations and checking how oval the bores are. I've not taken the pistons out, I've not taken any of the bearings out, but the oil pressure, even with that dodgy rocker shaft and cranking, was 30 psi, as you saw earlier in one of the earlier videos. Burpy burpy burp. So could well be, you know, that cam followers, we'll see. I don't know. Talk to customer.